To teach anything else is to go into error. So let us go a little bit again to the book of Matthew once more. But we're going to read that same passage of scripture. We'll go to Matthew chapter 27. We'll see if Matthew have any other information there for us. Matthew chapter 27 and verse 50. It says, Jesus, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. So here it is, Matthew also is recording the death of Christ and show that Christ literally died. We'll skip some and go to verse 57. And in verse 57 it says, Matthew chapter 27, verse 57, it says, when the evening was come, there came a rich man of Arimathea named Joseph, who also himself was Jesus' disciple. He went to Pilate and begged the body of Jesus. Then Pilate commanded the body of Jesus to be delivered. And when Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn out in the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the door of the sepulchre and departed. So here it is. Joseph of Arimathea took the body of Christ along with other disciples, and they placed it in the tomb, and they rolled a great stone to cover the tomb. Verse 62, it says, now the next day that followed the day of the preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees came together unto Pilate, saying, so remember that deceiver said, while he was yet alive, after 3 days I will rise again. Command therefore that the sepulchre be made sure until the 3rd day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away and say unto the people, he is risen from the dead. So the last error shall be worse than the first. Pilate said unto them, ye have a watch, go your way, make it as sure as you can. So they went and made the sepulchre sure, sealing the stone with and setting a watch. In other words, so they put the seal of Pilate on it and set a watch. In other words, they put guards. They had guards to guard the tomb. So even the chief priests here, they understood, and they are saying that Christ says that he will rise on the 3rd day. So they had their understanding also. Chapter 28, Matthew 1 and 2. It says, in the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat upon it. So we understand how the stone was moved. It was moved by the angel of the Lord himself. So we skip some and go to verse 9 and 10. It says, and as they went to tell his disciples, behold, Jesus met them, saying, all hail. And they came and held him by the feet and worshipped him. Then said Jesus unto them, be not afraid, go tell my brethren that they go into Galilee, and there shall they see me. So it is clearly understood that Matthew now records that Christ died on Friday, the preparation day, and rose again on the first day of the week, being Sunday. So the question is, did Matthew make a mistake in his recording earlier. So let us go back to it. Matthew chapter 12, verses 38 to 40. Now the argument will be, if Matthew had made a mistake here, or there is a mistranslation, what part of the Bible then can we say is really true? Then anyone can argue, well, there's a mistranslation here, there's a mistake here. So then what then is the meaning? There must be an obvious meaning for Christ to speak these words. But what happened is that we see what we want to see. Most of the time we see what we want to see, overlooking what is being said. So we read about Christ turning water into wine, and the first thing we conclude is that it's okay to use wine. Alcoholic wine, that is. Without really investigating. But we know that was pure grape juice. And the scenario in which it's used, it shows that when they were well drunk, in other words, when they were filled to capacity, not they were intoxicated. So even if there are Christian religions today that say you could use, but use in tolerance, in moderation, it still cannot stand. Because Christ gave people, if it was alcoholic wine, then he gave people, when the Bible records that they were well drunk. So there's no moderation there. So we understand that it means that when they were filled to satisfaction, you don't care again about what you get to drink. But Christ saved the best for last. Pure grape juice, the best grape juice they ever tasted. So what happened is that people see what they want to see. In most of the scriptures, that is why we have so many different organizations and divisions from this one Bible. Also, again, it's because people want to follow their own unconverted desires. But as I said before, the Bible is written in such a way that it calls for us to really meditate and investigate and dig deep that we may grow. So we read again, Matthew chapter 12, verses 38 to 40. It says, Then certain of the Pharisees and scribes answered, saying, Master, we would see a sign from thee. And he answered and said unto them, An evil and an adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given to it but the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Notice, we read the heart of the earth, but we interpret that as being the tomb. We interpret that as being the grave. Christ never said the grave. Christ never said the tomb. Of course, Christ knew the word grave. Right in John chapter 5, he speaks about they that are in the grave shall hear his voice. So the word grave is not used here. The word tomb is not used here. You understand how easy it is? And most of the time we interpret things according to what we see and not what we read. And how we read. For example, again, we read in Luke chapter 16 about Lazarus, the beggar, and the king. And that Lazarus died, and angels came and took him into the bosom of Abraham. And automatically we interpret that as saying, well, the angel took him to heaven. Whoever said that Abraham's bosom is heaven? But we understand that Christ was speaking to the people there on their own level. He was showing them that their theory of the gospel cannot work. The bosom of Abraham means that they literally came forth as descendants, physical descendants from Abraham. And they thought automatically that entitled them to a place in the kingdom of heaven. And Christ was teaching, no. That do not work. The gospel of Christ does not work that way. You must be born again. You must be justified, and you must live a sanctified life. God have no spoiled children. Not because you come forth from the loins of Abraham mean that you're automatically going to make it into the kingdom of heaven. So as we read in Matthew 12 here, this is the problem that persons overlook. Christ never said that he will be 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb. So what then did he mean by 3 days and 3 nights? Again, we overlook. Verse 40 says, for as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, Christ is making a comparison to the experience that he was going to have to that of which Jonah had. So in other words, to get the understanding, where we have to go? To the book of Jonah. Simple as that. Let us turn to the book of Jonah. In verse 1 of chapter 1, it says, now the word of the Lord came unto Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness is come up before me. But Jonah rose up and flee from Tarshish, from the presence of the Lord, and went down to Joppa, and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare thereof, and went down into it to go with them unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. In other words, from doing what God required of him. So we follow it up here. Verse 11, of course there was a great storm, and they tried all how to settle the boat while it was on the ocean, and they couldn't settle the boat. They started to throw off wares and clothes and other luggage, and the boat was still unsettled. And they prayed to their different gods until they cast lots, and they fell upon Jonah. Verse 11, then said they unto him, what shall we do unto thee, that the sea may be calm unto us? For the sea roared and was tempestuous. And he said unto them, take me up and cast me forth into the sea, so shall the sea be calm unto you. For I know that for my sake this great tempest is come upon you. Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to bring it to the land, but they could not, for the sea wroth and was tempestuous against them. Wherefore they cried unto the Lord and said, we beseech thee, O Lord, we beseech thee, let us not perish for this man's life, and lay not upon us innocent blood, for thou, O Lord, hast done as it pleased thee. So they took up Jonah and cast him forth into the sea, and the sea ceased from her raging. Then the men feared the Lord exceedingly, and offered a sacrifice unto the Lord, and made vows. Verse 17 now. Now the Lord had prepared a great whale to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the whale, in the fish, 3 days and 3 nights. Notice the exact words, the exact statement that Christ used in Matthew. And Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish. Chapter 2. And Jonah prayed unto the Lord his God out of the fish belly, and said, I cried by reason of mine affliction unto the Lord, and he heard me out of the belly of hell. Cried I, and thou heardest my voice. What it is Jonah is doing? Jonah is praying. So my question to you, is Jonah dead or is Jonah alive? Jonah is alive. Jonah is alive. So the experience that Jonah has here while he is in the belly of the whale, he is alive and he is praying unto God. So Christ is saying the experience there is the experience that I would have. Christ never said he would be in the tomb 3 days and 3 nights. So just as Jonah is crying out to God, he is alive. Christ says, during that time, I too will be crying out to God. And we'll see that. We will see that. Verse 3. For thou hast cast me into the deep, into the what? Midst of the seas. And the floods compassed me about. All thy billows and thy waves passed over me. Then said I am cast out of thy sight. Notice, Jonah is saying, I am cast out of thy sight. Christ was pleading also, right? My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Then said I am cast out of thy sight. Yet I will look again toward thy holy temple. In other words, Jonah was saying that he was completely cut off from God. The sufferings that he went through there was really rough. Now Christ is speaking some things here of the suffrage that Jonah experienced. And Christ is saying, this suffering, I will have something similar to that also. So Jonah suffered. I'll come to that point in a while. But let me read from the book Desire of the Ages. Desire of the Ages, page 686. 686, Desire of the Ages. And I would like to bring something to us also that we may agree with or we may not agree with at the end. But here in the book Desire of the Ages, this is on the Thursday night. This is on the Thursday night. So you understand the 3 days and the 3 nights mean the sufferings and the death also. Not that he will be 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb. Christ never used the word the tomb. And he's making a comparison with that of Jonah. And we understand that Jonah was alive while he was in the whale's belly. Because he prayed from the belly of the whale and sought this God to help him through the sufferings that he was going through. So I read Desire of the Ages, page 686, under the chapter Gethsemane. This was the Thursday night. So we understand the 3 days and the 3 nights. It says, as they approached the garden, paragraph 2, as they approached the garden, the disciples had marked the change that came over their master. Never before had they seen him so utterly sad and silent. This is when? Thursday night. Understand when the suffering starts. As Jonah. Notice that comparison. As Jonah. So Jonah was alive in the whale's belly. Never before had they seen him so utterly sad and silent. As he proceeded, this strange sadness deepened. Yet they dared not question him as to the cause. his form swayed as if he were about to fall. Upon reaching the garden, the disciples looked anxiously for their usual place of retirement that their master might rest. Every step that he now took was with labored effort. He groaned aloud as if suffering under the pressure of a terrible burden. Twice his companions supported him, or he would have fallen to the earth. I skip some. 689. These are the ages. Again, the Son of God was seized with superhuman agony, and fainting and exhausted, he staggered back to the place of his former struggle. His suffering was even greater than before. As the agony of soul came upon him, his sweat was as if it were great drops of blood falling down to the ground. Wow. So we start to understand the suffering that Christ was going through here. The disciples said they never saw their master in such sadness and agony. And this is the Thursday night. So we understand now the 3 days and the 3 nights. The cypress and palm trees were the silent witnesses of his anguish. From their leafy branches dropped heavy dew upon his stricken form, as if nature wept over its altar, wrestling alone with the powers of darkness. So we understand that the 3 days and 3 nights never meant that Christ will be 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb. As a matter of fact, Christ never used the words grave or tomb. So we understand that as Jonah suffered 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale, that he was alive, and that he suffered, and that he cried out to God, even as we see in here, Christ is suffering as never before. Now I want to add something to this. You see, sometimes things happen after certain events that shed more and clearer light on what happened before. What am I saying? What am I speaking about? So I'll give an example. This gentleman was doing some work home, and he had rested his glass on the table. Not too much to the edge and not too much to the inside, but more to the edge. And he went outside to collect some things. Himself and his 4-year-old son was home alone. He was drinking something, a juice, let me say some juice, and he rested the glass of juice on the edge of the table. And he went outside to collect some other things. And on returning back, he heard a crash. As he came inside, he saw his 4-year-old son running from the direction of the table. As he looked down, he saw the glass on the ground, mash up. So who you would blame if you were him? Of course, you would blame his son. Because no one else was there at home, and he saw the son running from the direction of the table. But lo and behold, about 3 months after, again, he's doing some work, and he's home alone by himself this time. And he's inside, same procedure, he's usually drink his juice, rest on the table, continue doing his work, and he heard a crash. And what do you think happened? The glass fall and break. No one around. So he realized what is taking place. As he sat down there contemplating, he saw the curtain blew over the table and sweep it like this. Took down the glass. So he understood now that thing happened in the future, give more light to things in the past. What has that to do with our study this morning? So let us see it. Back to Jonah. Jonah chapter 1, the last verse 17 says, "Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights." Notice, Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Then Jonah prayed unto the Lord his God out of the fish belly. So Jonah is alive while he's praying in the fish belly. But Christ is saying, as Jonah was, so the experience that I will have. So Christ was alive while he groaned and suffered. But he died. And he spent 3 days and 2 nights. So I'm putting it up to us that the light is that Jonah never remained alive 72 hours in the belly of the whale. That is a tough experience, to remain alive 72 hours in the belly of the whale. And a man naturally will die also. So as Jonah entered into the belly of the whale, he suffered real suffrage, and he prayed, and God put him to sleep as Christ slept. So you see, things that happen in the future would give light to things in the past. So when Jonah was spat out of the fish, he received, as it were, a resurrection. Of course, death, as we know, is a state of sleep. So he would not have known anything else. And when he rise again, he will rise with just the memories, the thoughts that he had before. So we understood now that Christ is making a comparison, because persons have arguments concerning Jonah also to suffer 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a fish. Who could live that long? There will be real torture also on the part of God to have a man casting around in the belly of a fish, and you're alive. If you get that experience for like 10 minutes, there's real suffering. Imagine if you say 3 days and 3 nights, 72 hours, as it were. So God is a merciful God. So Christ cast light on the experience of Jonah. So the 3 days and 3 nights doesn't mean 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb. It means the suffering, the great suffering that will come upon Christ started on Thursday night, and that he cried out to God.